back to my channel. My name is Coralie, and in 2023 I really got into reading. So I bought a Kindle and it honestly changed my life. I read quite a few books in 2023, probably the most books I've ever read in a year, and I thought I would make a video talking you through all the books that I read and what I thought about them, and then what my plans are for this year when it comes to reading. So without further ado, here are all the books I read in 2023, and only 2 of them were actual physical copies of books. Everything else was read on my Kindle. I just found it so convenient. I would read it in bed, I could read it wherever I wanted. I'm currently in Germany. I could read it on the plane. I had no extra weight of books. It was fantastic. But here we go. Here are all the books I read in 2023. I'm going to read them from highest rated to lowest rated, so let's get into it. So the first one is Pandora's Clock by John J. Nance, and honestly, I don't know how I came across this author and how I came across his books, because they are quite old. I believe they were written in the 90s, but they are just so fascinating. It is like an airplane thriller, and basically this virus breaks out on an airplane and they're forced to continue flying pretty much. They can't land, because if they land, they could infect the entire world with this virus. And it was just such a good book. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I think that is my top book of 2023, Pandora's Clock by John J. Nance. But before I read that one, I actually read Final Approach by the same author, John J. Nance, and this was a NTSB figuring out an airplane crash book. And again, I absolutely loved it because I'm a sucker for air crash investigation. I love that show. It's not good for my mental health when I'm actually flying, but I just find it so fascinating. And to have a book that dove into all the things that happen after an airplane crash. Basically 2 planes collide on the runway and there's a lot of deaths. It's incredibly tragic. And then the entire book is figuring out what happened, how it happened, who's responsible, all that sort of stuff. And it goes from the moment the crash happens to survivors to everything. It's a good book. If you like air crash investigation, or you want to try out a airplane thriller, I would highly recommend Final Approach or Pandora's Clock by John J. Nance, and both of those are 5 stars for me, to the point where I definitely want to read more of his books this year because I loved them. Okay, so next is a classic, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Now, I put this off reading for quite a little while. I know it was incredibly popular over on TikTok, and I thought it doesn't really sound like a book for me. I wasn't really interested in the period piece. It's not really a period piece, but it's going through this woman's life from, oh my god, it's been a while since I read it, like the 50s. It goes through this woman's life and the 7 husbands that she's had throughout her career. She was a famous woman. Her life was very well documented, and everybody wants to know all about the 7 husbands. So it's all about this woman interviewing Evelyn Hugo, and you see the story takes you back throughout her life. And honestly, I did not expect to love it as much as I did, to the point where that was another 5-star read for me. So The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, if you haven't read it yet, it's worth the hype. Okay, so next is Verity, and this was another hard copy book that I actually read, and again, I really like this one and I completely get the hype. I am a sucker for a thriller, and this one kept me on the edge of my seat. I read it so quickly. It was absolutely insane, but I'm sure I'll just skim over this one because this one was popular for quite a long time. I'm sure you've all read Verity, and if you haven't, read it, because that was another 5-star read for me. And the last 5-star read for me for this year, and was also another physical copy, was The Butcher and the Wren. So this was written by one of the co-hosts of Morbid, and I love that podcast. I am a sucker for a true crime podcast, which is probably why I have so much crippling anxiety, because all my spare time is spent listening about murder. But this book, amazing. Oh my god, you get two perspectives in this book, which I found really fascinating. You get the perspective of the killer and the perspective of the person hunting the killer, and it was just... It was such a good book, and I'm pretty sure she's writing a second one right now, which I am so excited for, because she ended the first book with the perfect setup for a sequel. And if you like a murder mystery, if you like a thriller, girlie, I could not recommend The Butcher and the Wren more. Even if you're not a fan of morbid, you don't have to be a fan of morbid, because it is just such a good standalone book. Going down the list a little bit, I'm gonna class this whole series, I read a series, this whole series I'm gonna say 4.5, because I couldn't stop reading them, and that was the Naturals series. So that is the Naturals, Killer Instinct, All In, Bad Blood, and the, what's it called? The little tiny book at the end, 12. But I loved that series. I found myself not wanting to put it down and getting incredibly attached to the characters. So The Naturals is about a bunch of teenagers who have natural talents when it comes to crime. Like, one is a profiler, one can read emotions really well, one can detect whenever you're telling lies, which is all very crucial traits when it comes to catching criminals. So the books follow these teenagers as they hone in on their skills, and they help the FBI solve intense murders, and it was such a good series. I finished it in a very short amount of time. I just read book after book after book, and honestly I was kind of sad when I finished it. I thought, you know, 4 books, that's a lot, 5 books if you include the final mini book, but I could read another one. So now we're out of the 5s, the 4.5s, we're up to a 4. So like I said, I'm a big thriller girly, and I have been hearing the hype about The Housemaid, and I decided to read it, and it was pretty good. I might actually scale that back to a 3.5 now that I think about it. 3.5, 4, something like that. 3.75, let's go right in between. I liked it very much. I finished it very quickly. That just happens for me in a thriller. Apparently this author is amazing at those types of thrillers, so I'll be sure to read more of her work. But it's about this woman that gets a job as being a maid for a wealthy family, and all the very horrible things that happen to her while she is living under that roof as a maid for that family. And there's a pretty good twist towards the middle, like towards the middle end of the book, but then it also wasn't that incredibly jaw-dropping. Everyone was like, oh my god, the twist, I never saw it coming. It was good, but it wasn't insane. So I feel like The Housemaid is a very good way to get yourself into thriller if you want to get started in the thriller genre. So next I read 5 Survive, and this is the author of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which was very popular. I read that book probably the year before, pretty good. Haven't read the sequels to that yet, but I read 5 Survive, and that I'm gonna say is a 4. I did really enjoy that book. It is about 6 people, you get it, the title, 5 Survive, 6 people going on a holiday in an RV, and that RV breaks down and someone is shooting them, pretty much. There's a sniper, and they want information out of these 6 kids, and they're willing to kill to get it. So the really interesting thing about this book is the chapters are set out by hours. So you're reading the entire book is the entire night that this ordeal is happening. So you'll get to 10 p.m. this has happened. The next chapter will be 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I just found that really fascinating. Like an entire book that only takes place in one night. And I really liked it, so 4 stars. Okay, so next is None of This Is True, and I'm gonna say 3.5 for this one because I liked it. Like I said, I love a thriller. I read it very quickly. There's just something about a thriller I can't seem to put down, which it's about this woman that hosts a podcast. The story is about the woman that hosts a podcast creating a podcast about another woman's life, and you see the horrors of her life throughout the interviews of this podcast. And while it was a good book, and like I said, I finished it really quickly, I personally found it quite predictable. Like, I felt like there wasn't any real twists that shocked me. I did find it quite predictable, but it was still a good book. Sticking to thrillers, because apparently I can't be stopped, is The Silent Patient, which I'm gonna give 3.5 stars, just like None of This Is True. And yeah, I've had this book being talked about for a long time. I've wanted to add it to my to-read list for a long time, and I finally got around to it and did that. And it was good, 3.5 stars. Of course it was good, but again, it was kind of predictable, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. It wasn't quite as thriller-filled as I thought it would be. The ending was definitely a twist. I didn't see the ending coming, but the beginning, the middle, it was a little bit slow for me. I feel like it wasn't quite what I was expecting, but it was still a good read. And again, if you're getting into thriller, I feel like The Silent Patient is a great place to start. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna give it 3.5. Honestly, I'm just a really high rater of books. I tend to rate things really high, like maybe it should be a 3, but I'm gonna say 3.5, and that is The Inheritance Games. So this is by the same author as The Naturals. So after I finished The Naturals, I downloaded The Inheritance Games pretty quickly because I love The Naturals so much. I figured The Inheritance Games would be just as good. And this book is about a young girl that inherits the entire wealth of a billionaire, and this young girl has never met the billionaire, and as you can imagine, the family is not happy. One of the clauses of this girl inheriting the billions is that she has to live inside their house for an entire year, and the book is documenting exactly what is happening while this poor girl is trying to inherit billions of dollars. And this is a series. There's a lot of books. That's what a series is. There's like 3 more books in this series, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm gonna read the others. Let me know in the comments below if you've read The Inheritance Games and if you recommend it, but I wasn't entirely enthused, is that the word? in The Inheritance Games like I was in The Naturals. So I don't feel a pull right now to read the other Inheritance Games, but if you think it's worth it, let me know below and I might read some more. So next is No Hard Feelings, and this was just a fun little romantic comedy kind of book, I'd say. It's based in Australia, which I thought was really fun because you don't see a lot of that. And yeah, this was literally just an easy read, romantic, funny, relatable young woman navigating her life as a single woman pretty much, which is very relatable to a lot of people out there. And while I may not be single right now, I sure remember what it was like. So I'm gonna give that one 3.5. If you like a romance, if you like a comedy, give it a go. So next is Addicted to You, and this is an entire series and people froth this series and I did not like it. I'm gonna give this a 2. Basically, it's about these 2 people that pretend to be in a relationship together to hide their problems. One is addicted to sex and the other is addicted to alcohol, and together they trick their family that they're in a relationship together and they help each other out. So the one addicted to sex can go and sleep with as many people as she wants without their family knowing because she thinks she's in a committed relationship, and the one that's addicted to alcohol can drink as much as he wants because the one addicted to sex is not going to tell. But I like the premise of this. I think it's different, and I think it's kind of fun to have a character where it's the woman that's addicted to sex. You don't really see that side of things much, but I don't know, it just didn't hook me much. I don't think I will read the second one. It just didn't really interest me. I like the idea of it, but yeah, it wasn't really for me. So there you go, addicted to you. Okay, so next is Mr. Wrong Number, and this just looked like fun to me, like two people texting, it's the wrong number, they fall in love, who could it be? So cute, so romantic. I like the idea of this because you were reading the text in the book, and very, very predictable, kind of boring. I'm gonna give this one a 2. Like, I finished it, I somewhat enjoyed it, but it was very predictable and kind of boring. So Mr. Wrong Number, there you go. Then I had a DNF. I started reading Punk 57, and I had this as a hard copy book before I got my Kindle, and I was reading it. I didn't deliberately not finish it, I just kind of didn't. Like, I had no urge to pick it up and finish reading it. And then I got my Kindle and I downloaded Final Approach, and I was obsessed with that book, and I've never gone back to Punk 57, and I don't think I will. And in terms of started reading, still reading, like I will finish them, I just haven't gotten around to it, is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm probably about halfway through that. So far, so good. And Beach Read, I'm probably about a quarter of a way through Beach Read. These are more light reads. I'm pretty sure Beach Read is a romance. I'm not at the romance part yet, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is more like a literary fiction about friendship and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I was reading those ones as I traveled to Germany, and yeah, I just got distracted. I started reading a thriller and I finished that, and then I read another thriller, but I do plan on finishing Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Beach Read at some point. And yeah, those are all the books I read in 2023. I think it was a pretty damn good year for reading, and my goal for 2024 is to read 24 books. So there you go. And for some of those books I want to read, let's talk about it. So I want to read more John J. Nance, the author of Final Approach and Pandora's Clock, because they were just such good books. And I am currently reading Fourth Wing. Yes, I caved. My friends won't stop talking about it, and so far I get it. I think I'm about 20% through, and I am enjoying it so far. And I have never read a fantasy book before, so honestly I wasn't sure if it was going to be for me. Like, the idea of dragons didn't really excite me, but so far I am actually really enjoying it. So I might get into some more fantasy this year, like maybe the Sarah J. Maas books that are really popular. And I mean, once I finish Fourth Wing, if I enjoyed it, which I'm sure I will have because I'm enjoying it so far, I'll read Iron Flame. And yeah, I might also, let me know in the comments below if I should, but I might read Harry Potter. I've never read the Harry Potters, and me and my boyfriend just finished a movie marathon of all the Harry Potters, and he's read all the books, and he was telling me about all the crazy things that happen in the books that don't happen in the movies, and he's recommending I should read Harry Potter. So I might add some Harry Potter to my list. But yeah, other than that, I think it's gonna be a very thriller heavy year, maybe a little bit of fantasy. I might really get into it if Fourth Wing continues going the way it's going, and maybe a couple romances sprinkled in there. I've heard Emily Henry is quite good. If I enjoy the rest of Beach Read, I might read, what's that popular one called? Happy Place? Something like that. But yeah, that is my 2023 reading and my goals for 2024 reading. I am very much looking forward to it. I am so happy I bought my Kindle. If you're thinking about buying a Kindle, I highly recommend it. I have read a hell of a lot more books since I got it, but yeah, there you go. I will keep you updated on my reading of 2024, and let me know what your reading goal is and what your favorite book of 2023 was in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.